Let's get going, beginning this news hour in the United States, where figures just out paint a devastating picture of the state of the economy. In just 5 weeks, all of the jobs created since the end of the 2009 recession have been wiped out. Here are the numbers. Last week, another 4.4 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits. That's fewer than the week before, when more than 5.3 million registered for jobless support. But the speed of the rise in those figures is unprecedented. In all, more than 26 million Americans have now applied for unemployment benefits since the end of March. That was when President Donald Trump made the first of his COVID-19 outbreak declarations. Let's talk now to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, joining us from Washington. So staggering figures, Kimberly.
Yeah, they are staggering, but not unexpected. We know that for some time there is estimated to be at least 46 million Americans that instantly became unemployed as a result of these stay-at-home orders in the United States. And so the reason that we see these significant climbs week after week is that this is the unemployment insurance offices across the country processing these claims as quickly as they can, but not able to do it all at once. So what we know is that many Americans had struggled to get through on the websites. These are antiquated systems that just aren't designed for this kind of demand. And so as a result, we know that these numbers will continue to climb for a number of weeks. But this, Peter, is a reason why this U.S. president is so eager to reopen the economy. The numbers are staggering, as you point out, and they hit across all sectors. Especially hard hit is the hospitality industry, restaurants and hotels, but also construction. So the U.S. president had been the jobs president. He brought on a platform as he campaigned in 2016, 2017, the promise to create jobs. And for the most part, he delivered it. But all of those gains have evaporated. And this is a president trying to run for re-election. So this is why you hear the tone from the U.S. president, very eager to reopen this economy. But again, these numbers make that especially challenging.
And when it comes to the election in November, when it comes to the voters, I guess what we're seeing here as well is a direct impact on people who did not have any fiscal safety net. They don't have savings. They've got to hit the mortgage. They've got to hit the car payments. And if they're up Queer Street and they don't have any money for 4 weeks, they're financially in very, very hot water.
Yeah, and you'll remember that enormous rescue package that came out of the U.S. Congress, that $2 trillion package that allowed for many Americans to get a check of roughly $1,200 US. I can tell you in major cities like Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, that doesn't go very far. That barely pays the rent for a very small-sized single-room apartment. So this is hardly going to be adequate for even just a single person to try and manage, not just for 4 weeks, but potentially for 4 months. Because what we're being told is that many of these jobs aren't coming back. And that is what many Americans are starting to come to grips with. Peter, I can tell you the lineups for the food banks here are historic in terms of the need that is out there. There is a tremendous amount of suffering, and it's only going to continue. Still, this president is trying very hard to cheerlead. He is saying that there is a grand reopening of states soon that will be happening. He says roughly 20%, or rather 20 states, 40% of the population. But we know this is going to be a very measured reopening. In fact, there even is conflict right now between the state of Georgia and the U.S. president that this governor may be opening a little bit too soon and maybe in conflict with some of the federal guidance that calls for a very phased opening. But very quickly, Peter, I can tell you there is an effort on Capitol Hill to try and bring about even more help for the states. That is coming in the form of a legislative package that has already passed the Senate, now has to go through the House of Representatives. Significant because this will allow small businesses to keep some of those employees on their payroll. The first rollout of this, very successful, in the neighborhood of $350 billion, but it ran out. So now they're looking for more money. They've got the money. It's just a matter now of voting on it, the president signing it into law, and all significant in that package will be money for national testing, something that will also allow workers to begin to go back to work.
When it comes to making sure people have enough money literally to live, though, Kimberly, is there more pressure coming at this administration from people like Boeing? We're reporting on that today. They're just about to lose forever, we assume, 10% of their plane building division. And they're going to go to the Trump administration and say, look, you've got to give us a bailout. That's not loose change in somebody's back pocket. That's going to be a multi-million, multi-billion-dollar request on their part.
Yeah, and right now, sort of the underlying tone in Washington that's not being talked about is, how is the United States paying for all of this? We've seen some very creative arrangements that are taking place. The Federal Reserve, that typically monitors and sort of controls interest rates and monetary policy, now doing these unusual type of loans that we don't normally see. Washington's become very creative for the sheer amount of money that it's handing out. You've got to remember, this is a country with an enormous double-digit deficit. This is what nobody's talking about right now, is as they continue to try and prop up this economy in election years, they continue to try and help alleviate the real and genuine suffering that exists in this country. There's no discussion about how we are going to pay all of this back. We already knew that this debt that was accumulated in the United States was going to be passed on for generations. This is... Republicans typically are fiscal conservatives. That's not the conversation that's being had right now in Washington. And again, we have to be cognizant of the fact this is an election year. This is a U.S. president that says he wants to rebuild the economy a second time. But given these enormous payouts that are happening, not just for ordinary individuals, but the corporations, as you point out, it seems enormously hard to try and balance the books, not just before this election, but for the foreseeable future.
Kimberly, thanks very much. Let's talk now to Aaron Sojourner. He's a Labour economist and professor at the University of Minnesota. He has advised both the Trump and Obama administrations. Aaron Sojourner, welcome to the News Hour here on Al Jazeera. What does this tell us about the state of the U.S. economy?
Well, it's an unprecedented fall in employment at a really rapid pace. It means that we're dealing with the public health challenge as best we can, given the limited tools we have. But we really need to deal with the public health threat head on.
And how will they do that?
I think we need one of three things. We need a vaccine. We need widespread treatment that works. We don't have either of those things technically right now, technologically proven. The third thing is wide-scale testing, which has been proven feasible in other places, but we haven't done it here. And that allows you to relax the broad quarantines and allows you to tell apart who's contagious and sick and make sure they get care from people who are well and can work and more safely, and enables a lot of public health strategies like contact tracing and other mechanisms. So we need to throw every productive resource we have at that.
OK,
and,
we're talking about the economy as well. Just to interrupt you, Aaron Sojourner, we're talking about the economy as well, clearly. What does this administration do now to make sure that when these figures are revisited in, say, 2 or 4 weeks, 26 million unemployed hasn't turned into being 30 million unemployed or 35 million unemployed?
I'm telling you, there's no shortcut around the public health challenge. There's no way to get around it other than to develop public health strategies that can preserve lives while allowing people to get along with their regular economic activity. You can try to take a shortcut and hurry people back to work without being able to tell who's contagious and who's not, but it'll provoke a worse health crisis and a worse economic crisis. So
if you were advising,
we can do.
Pardon me for interrupting you, but if you were advising the people in the White House today, would you be saying to them, the states, the individual states must not reopen, because if you send people back to work to be able to say you've got them in a job, you might end up with that second coming flu season spike of the flu and the coronavirus blended into that as well?
Yeah, I think that is a real risk, and it needs to be managed with eyes wide open and clear sense of the costs and benefits. So, there's plenty of people who are working right now who are doing essential jobs like healthcare and groceries and public safety, and they are taking additional risks than they used to, and we're all grateful for that. So it's a question of, it's not a light switch, it's a question of being smart and balancing the risks and benefits of work. But what I would advise them is to invest every productive resource you can in meeting the public health challenge. Talk to the public health experts and give them everything they need to be successful. And at the same time, I think the important question is, how do we support families and small businesses through this time when we're asking them and we need them to stop doing their usual ways of supporting themselves and give up that income, and we need to find alternative ways to support them so that they don't deteriorate economically and health-wise and mental health-wise. So they're ready to come back when the time comes that can be done safely.
Okay, Aaron Sojourner, thank you very much.